Have you ever noticed how sometimes the harder you chase something, the further away it seems to get? Like trying to grab smoke with your hands. The tighter you squeeze, the more it slips through your fingers. Or perhaps you've experienced those magical moments when you finally stopped obsessing over a problem, and suddenly, almost miraculously, the solution appeared? As if the universe was just waiting for you to loosen your grip a little? What if I told you this isn't just coincidence? What if there's a profound truth here? One that mystics, psychologists, and even quantum physicists have been pointing to from different angles. Today, we're diving deep into one of the most counterintuitive yet powerful principles for creating the life you truly desire: the art of letting go of the how. This isn't about giving up on your dreams or surrendering to fate. It's quite the opposite. It's about understanding a hidden mechanism in the fabric of reality itself. How, when you release your attachment to the specific path, reality has this fascinating way of bending around you, creating openings and possibilities you could never have planned. In this exploration, we'll examine this principle from multiple perspectives: the psychological foundations, why our minds resist this concept, and how to work with, rather than against, your natural thought patterns; the spiritual dimensions, what ancient wisdom traditions have been telling us about surrender and flow; the practical applications, real tools you can implement today to start experiencing this shift; and most importantly, how to maintain this delicate balance between focused intention and open detachment. Before we begin, I want you to know something important. This isn't about adopting some perfect spiritual practice or becoming some enlightened being overnight. This is a journey of gentle unfolding, of becoming more of who you truly are. And I'm right here with you, still learning, still growing, still sometimes getting caught in the trap of over-controlling life myself. Let's start with something we all experience: the fundamental paradox of human existence. We desperately want control, yet the things we want most are often beyond our direct control. Think about it. We want love, but you can't force someone to love you. We want inspiration, but you can't command your mind to have that brilliant idea exactly when you need it. We want peace, but the harder you try to calm your mind, the more agitated it often becomes. Carl Jung, one of the pioneers of depth psychology, had a fascinating way of looking at this. He said, "What you resist persists." The more energy you put into fighting something, the more you actually feed it. And conversely, what you embrace and accept often transforms or dissolves. This isn't just philosophical theory, it's reflected in our everyday experiences. Have you ever had the experience of trying to remember someone's name? The harder you search your memory, the more it eludes you. Then later, when you've given up and your mind is relaxed, perhaps you're in the shower or about to fall asleep, suddenly the name pops into your consciousness. What's happening here is that your conscious, striving mind, what psychologists call the ego, is actually getting in its own way. When you're trying too hard, you activate your sympathetic nervous system, the fight or flight response. Your muscles tense, your breathing becomes shallow, and your thinking narrows. You literally put your brain in a state that's terrible for creative solutions and synchronistic connections. But when you let go, you shift into your parasympathetic nervous system, the rest and digest mode. Your body relaxes, your breathing deepens, and your mind opens. Suddenly, connections can form that weren't possible before. This is the scientific foundation for what spiritual teachers have been saying for millennia. Surrender is strength, not weakness. Think of water. Water doesn't fight the rock in its path, it flows around it. It doesn't struggle or strain. It simply adjusts its course, finding the path of least resistance. And yet, over time, water reshapes even the hardest stone. This is the kind of strength we're talking about, not the forceful, pushing kind, but the adaptive, flowing kind. The kind that works with reality rather than against it. Now, I want to be clear about something. Letting go of the how doesn't mean letting go of your dreams or goals. It doesn't mean becoming passive or indifferent. It means holding your vision with unwavering clarity while remaining flexible about the path to get there. Consider the difference between these two approaches: rigid attachment to the how. I must get this specific job at this specific company, and if I don't, I've failed. Flexible detachment from the how. I'm clear that I want work that uses my creativity, makes a difference, and provides financial stability. This job seems like a great path to that, but I'm open to other possibilities that might fulfill these deeper desires even better. Let me share a personal example. Years ago, I was fixated on a particular career path. I had my 10-year plan all mapped out, complete with specific positions and salary goals. I was so attached to this vision that when obstacles appeared, I saw them as personal failures rather than redirections. It was only after a particularly painful setback, what I thought was my dream job falling through, that I was forced to let go, not of my deeper desires for meaning and contribution, but of the specific form I thought they had to take. And you know what happened? Within months, an opportunity appeared that I never could have planned for. It didn't fit my original blueprint at all, but it fulfilled my core desires in ways I couldn't have imagined. Had I clung to my original how, I would have missed it completely. This isn't just anecdotal. Research in positive psychology shows that people who maintain what's called flexible goal adjustment, the ability to modify their approach or even their specific goals while staying connected to their core values, report higher levels of well-being and resilience. They're also more likely to achieve meaningful success in the long run. A fascinating study from the University of Scranton tracked people who had set firm New Year's resolutions versus those who set what they called compass goals, directional intentions that focused more on moving toward a general positive outcome than hitting specific metrics. Guess which group was more likely to make significant positive changes? The compass goal group, by a significant margin. When you think about it, this makes intuitive sense. The future contains infinite variables that we can't possibly predict or control. The person who builds their happiness on a rigid plan is building on sand. But the person who knows what matters to them while staying adaptable to life's currents is infinitely more prepared for reality as it actually unfolds. There's something remarkable about how wisdom traditions around the world, despite their many differences, converge on certain core insights about human consciousness and its relationship to reality. One of these convergent insights is precisely what we're discussing today: the paradoxical power of surrender. In Taoism, they call it wu-wei, often translated as non-doing or effortless action. It's the concept of aligning yourself so perfectly with the natural flow of life that your actions become effortless. Not passive, but harmonious, like a skilled sailor working with the wind rather than against it. The Tao Te Ching puts it beautifully. The master does nothing, yet leaves nothing undone. In Buddhist tradition, attachment is seen as the root of suffering, not desire itself, but the clinging quality we bring to our desires. When we grasp too tightly at specific outcomes, we create resistance to what is actually emerging. We become blind to the gifts and opportunities that don't match our preconceptions. Christianity speaks of surrender in its own way. Thy will be done. There's a profound wisdom in recognizing that something larger than our individual ego might have a perspective and plan that exceeds our limited view. Even modern physics points in this direction. Quantum mechanics shows us a world where rigid determinism breaks down, where probability fields collapse into reality through observation, and where interconnection is the fundamental nature of things rather than separation. I'm not suggesting we need to adopt any particular spiritual framework or metaphysical belief system. The beauty of this principle is that it works regardless of your personal beliefs. You can approach it as a psychological tool, a spiritual practice, or simply a practical strategy for navigating life more effectively. What matters is the core insight that reality is more fluid, more responsive to consciousness than our everyday perception suggests, and that there's a sweet spot between focused intention and open surrender that allows this fluidity to work in your favor. Have you ever noticed how some people seem to live charmed lives? It's not that they don't face challenges, everyone does, but there's a certain grace to how they move through life. Opportunities seem to find them. The right connections appear at the right time. They experience a kind of effortless success that leaves others wondering, what's their secret? I've studied these people, both historically significant figures and ordinary people in various fields who demonstrate this quality. What I've found is that they share certain traits that align perfectly with what we're discussing. They have crystal clear vision about what truly matters to them. They take consistent action toward that vision. They remain unusually open to unexpected paths and opportunities. They interpret setbacks as redirections rather than failures, and they maintain a deep trust in the process of life itself. This last point is perhaps the most subtle but powerful. There's a fundamental trust operating in these people, not necessarily in any specific external force, but in the inherent intelligence of life itself. Some might call it God, others universe, others simply the natural unfolding of complex systems. The name matters less than the quality of relationship. I remember speaking with an incredibly successful entrepreneur who described his approach this way. I set clear intentions every morning, then I go about my day with complete presence, looking for how the universe wants to help me. When something unexpected happens, instead of resisting it, my first thought is always, how might this be useful? What door is opening that I couldn't see before? This approach, this dance between intention and surrender, creates a kind of aligned momentum. You're not forcing reality to conform to your plans. You're co-creating with it. Think of planting a garden. You prepare the soil, plant the seeds at the right depth, water appropriately. These are all intentional actions. But then comes the surrender. You don't dig up the seeds every day to check their progress. You don't try to force the stems to grow faster by pulling on them. You trust the inherent intelligence of the natural process while continuing to provide the right conditions. Growing a dream works the same way. You set clear intentions, take aligned action, create the right conditions, and then you trust the natural unfolding while remaining responsive to what's emerging. Now, I want to address something important. Some people misinterpret spiritual teachings about surrender and detachment. They think it means becoming passive or not caring about outcomes, or pretending to be above normal human desires. That's not what we're talking about here at all. True surrender isn't passive, it's deeply active, but in a different way than striving. It requires tremendous presence, awareness, and responsiveness. It's not about not caring. It's about caring so deeply that you're willing to allow something even better than what you had planned. And this isn't about bypassing normal human emotions either. When you're working towards something meaningful, of course you'll feel disappointment when things don't go as expected. That's natural. The difference is in how quickly you can move through that disappointment to ask, what's trying to happen here? What's the opportunity in this apparent setback? Let's roll up our sleeves and talk about how to actually implement this principle in your daily life. Because theory is wonderful, but transformation happens through practice. I'm going to share 7 specific practices that have helped me and countless others develop this balance between intention and surrender. You don't need to implement all of them at once. Even just one, practiced consistently, can begin to shift your relationship with control and open you to new possibilities. The first practice is what I call the morning clarity ritual. This is about starting each day by reconnecting with what truly matters to you, while explicitly releasing attachment to how it manifests. Find a quiet moment early in your day, before the world's demands rush in. Take 3 deep breaths to center yourself. Then ask yourself 3 questions. What matters most to me today? What specific actions will I take toward these priorities? What am I willing to let go of or be surprised by today? That third question is crucial. You might say something like, today, I release my attachment to exactly how my presentation goes. I'm open to it unfolding in a way that serves everyone's highest good, which might look different than I've planned. This simple practice takes just 5 minutes, but creates a powerful container for your day, one that balances focused direction with open possibility. The second practice is what I call the preference shift. This is a subtle but profound change in how you relate to your desires. Most of us move through life with demanding energy. I need this to happen. This must work out. I have to achieve this by this deadline. The preference shift transforms these rigid demands into strong preferences. I would strongly prefer this to happen, but I remain open to other possibilities that might serve even better. This isn't about diminishing your desires. Your preference can be incredibly strong, but there's a quality of openness that comes when you acknowledge that your limited perspective might not see all possibilities. The third practice is means goals clarification. This is about getting radically honest about which of your goals are actually just means to deeper ends. Often what we think we want is actually just one possible path to what we truly desire. When we confuse the means with the end, we create unnecessary suffering and limitation. For example, you might think you want a specific job, but what you truly desire is meaningful work and financial security. You might think you want a certain relationship, but what you truly desire is love, connection, and growth. When you clarify this distinction, you automatically loosen your grip on specific paths while strengthening your connection to what truly matters. Our fourth practice addresses a common misunderstanding. Some people think that letting go means not taking action. Nothing could be further from the truth. The aligned action paradox is about taking consistent, focused action while remaining mentally and emotionally unattached to specific outcomes. Think of an archer drawing a bow. There's tremendous focus, attention to detail, and precise action. Yet the moment the arrow is released, the archer can no longer control its flight. The mastery is in the preparation and the release, and then allowing the natural laws to take over. As you begin working with the principle of letting go of the how, you're likely to encounter some challenges. The first and perhaps most common concern is what I call the fear of passivity. People worry, if I let go of controlling exactly how things unfold, won't I become passive or lazy? Won't I stop taking action toward my goals? This fear makes perfect sense given how our culture often equates control with effectiveness. But it's based on a misunderstanding of what we're actually discussing. Letting go of the how doesn't mean letting go of action or responsibility. It means letting go of rigid attachment to a specific path or methodology. In fact, when you release this attachment, you often become more responsive and effective, not less. When the principle of letting go of the how becomes integrated into your being, when it shifts from something you do to something you are, your entire experience of life transforms. The first quality that emerges is what I call effortless progress. This doesn't mean life becomes free of challenges or that you don't need to apply effort. Rather, the nature of effort changes. Instead of pushing against resistance, your energy flows toward natural openings. You develop an intuitive sense for when to press forward and when to pause, when to take action and when to allow things to unfold. The second quality is synchronistic support. As you release rigid attachment to how things must unfold, you open yourself to support from unexpected sources. The right person appears at just the right time. An opportunity emerges that you couldn't have planned for. A seeming obstacle reveals itself as a perfect redirection towards something better. The third quality is authentic presence. When you're no longer consumed with controlling outcomes, you become more fully available to the present moment. Your conversations deepen because you're actually listening rather than planning what to say next. Your creativity expands because you're open to what wants to emerge rather than forcing a predetermined result. Your relationships transform because you're meeting people as they are rather than as you think they should be. The journey of letting go of the how is ultimately a journey home to yourself, to the natural way of being that exists beneath layers of cultural conditioning and fear-based control. It's a remembering of what you already know at your core, that you're a part of a living, intelligent universe that is always supporting you, even when, especially when, things don't go according to plan. So I invite you to begin. Start with one small area of your life where you've been gripping tightly to a specific outcome. Just for today, could you loosen your grip a little? Could you hold your desire clearly while opening to paths you haven't imagined? This doesn't require a leap of blind faith. It simply asks for a willingness to experiment, to try a different approach and see what happens. The greatest adventures often begin when we step off our carefully planned paths. When you let go of the how, reality doesn't just bend around you. It reveals possibilities beyond your imagination, inviting you into a life that's simultaneously more peaceful and more magical than you ever thought possible. The door is open. Will you walk through?